I recorded a video yesterday which I titled What Went Wrong, in which I tried to make sense of what the hell happened on Tuesday and how in the world this country could actually re-elect Donald Trump. Now, this video I'm just going to call part 2 of what went wrong, because this is me continuing to think about what we saw happen and to try to make sense of this. Now, I was on a hike earlier today in the woods, and I was thinking about these things, and that's what I like to do. I like to walk by myself and think about these issues. And I figured, oh, what the heck? Why don't I just pull out my phone and record my thoughts as I go? So that's what this is. So please watch, and I hope you enjoy it. First, let's deal with this issue of the missing Democrat votes. And what I mean by that is, I'm sure you've seen that Democrats, Kamala Harris, received 15 million fewer votes than Joe Biden got in 2020. And people are really scratching their head over that. In fact, Donald Trump received fewer votes than he did in 2020 as well. I've got the numbers here. In 2020, Trump received 74 million votes, roughly. This year, 71 million votes. So he lost 3 million votes from 2020. But the problem is that Kamala Harris lost a lot more from Biden's numbers. In 2020, Biden got about 81 million votes. Kamala Harris only got 66 million. That's a 15 million vote difference. By the way, I don't know if you can hear it, but there is a freaking small plane doing circles above my head, and it's really pissing me off. I'm on a hike in the woods right now. I want my peace and quiet, and I've gotten really pretty spoiled where I live. I don't really have a lot of noise, and so when there's something like this and some guy just flying around in circles, it makes me mad. Anyway, I don't even know if you can hear it. Anyway, so this 15 million votes that we lost from 2020 till now, people are like astonished by that. How could that possibly be? We saw what looked like a lot of voter enthusiasm for Kamala Harris. She raised enormous sums of money, triple the amount that Donald Trump raised, triple the number of donors. He's an out-and-out fascist, all the crimes he committed. How is it that Democrats and independents who voted for Biden last time, how in the world is it that they didn't show up and vote this time? And that's led to a lot of, I haven't heard any actual conspiracy theories about this as to the votes being stolen or anything, but it's led people to ask the question, did something happen? Was this vote rigged in some way? Look, I'm not going to go there because a couple reasons. One, no one's produced any evidence that any such thing happened. And number two, this would have, if there was a conspiracy here, if votes were rigged, if votes were stolen, this happened everywhere. This happened all across the country. In virtually every state, Kamala Harris underperformed Joe Biden's numbers. So it's just really not possible that this was some sort of rigged election conspiracy, because it would have had to happen everywhere. And Donald Trump, improved his position relative to the Democrats, or better said, Kamala Harris underperformed Biden, because Trump really didn't improve. I mean, he might have improved his percentages with certain groups, but he got fewer votes this time also. It's just that Kamala Harris got so many more fewer votes than Biden did. But, Trump did better in all kinds of states, in New Jersey, in Illinois. So this was, Kamala Harris's underperformance was everywhere. And so it's really not possible that this was rigged. I think the simple truth is just that Democrats and independents who voted for Biden this time just didn't come out and vote this time.
Why that is, we can guess. I really don't know. I mean, I have some thoughts here that I'm going to discuss with you, but it's really mind-boggling given the stakes of this election. And another thing about this idea that maybe the vote was rigged, there was some sort of conspiracy. A lot of these states have Democrat governors, so presumably they could get to the bottom of this if there was any vote rigging going on. And I haven't seen anyone in a position of authority, Democrat, Secretary of State or governor or anybody, say anything about this. So it just didn't happen. Democrats just didn't vote. You know, there are consequences to all our actions. And not just our actions, but our inactions. And we're going to be living with the consequences of people's inaction in this election, because really what happened here is that Democrats did not vote in the numbers that we needed. And independents as well, who voted for Biden last time, did not vote in the numbers we needed. Their choice not to vote is going to have dire consequences that we're going to be living with. That's the truth. The truth is, Democrats not voting is why Donald Trump is going to be president. Democrats' choice not to vote elected Donald Trump. That's the truth. So why did Democrats and Biden voting independents choose not to vote this time? Well, I'm sure there's lots of different reasons for different people, and I don't pretend to know what all of those are. But, you know, I have some thoughts, and one is that, first of all, the problem is that Donald Trump's support, for the most part, is cult support. It's a cult. It really, truly is. They would vote for him no matter what. And so he had a large base of voting base that was going to turn out no matter what, because it's a cult. Now, Trump didn't do as well as he did in 2020. I think he lost some Republican support. I think a lot of that Republican non-MAGA vote, I think a lot of them just didn't vote for president. I think that's what happened. They couldn't bring themselves to vote for Kamala Harris, but a lot of them didn't vote, and I think that's partially to explain why Trump didn't do as well as he did in 2020. But since Kamala Harris did so much worse than Biden, why would Democrats choose to sit this out? Well, one of the things that's come to my mind is that people tend to vote in greater numbers when they feel threatened, when they think things are going really badly in the country. It motivates them to vote more than when they think things are going good. When they're fat and happy, they're less motivated. And when you look at Trump supporters, or Republicans versus Democrats, and you know, Biden independents, among those two groups, which group do you think is more, it thinks the country is headed in the wrong direction more? Clearly the Republicans. They are fed a steady diet of being told that this is the worst economy in the world, that the country's going to hell in a handbasket, and on and on and on. They think this country is just in horrible, horrible shape, because that's the crap they listen to all the time. And so that, coupled with the fact that Trump has cult-like support, they were going to vote. They were going to vote in big numbers. Although, again, not as big as in 2020. Democrats, on the other hand, and independents realize, to a larger extent than among Republicans, that the country's actually doing pretty damn well right now. The economy, despite some problems with nagging inflation and things like that, the economy is actually doing really, really well. And despite Donald Trump's grim portrait of America as being overrun with crime, and illegal aliens are going to break into your house and slit your throat in your kitchen and all this crap. Most people know that that's bunk. Their neighborhoods aren't overridden with crime and illegal aliens, and their lives are pretty damn good right now. Things are going pretty darn well in this country. And when things are going well, people don't feel the need to vote as strongly. It doesn't motivate them. You know, things going well doesn't motivate people to the polls as much as things going badly. And among Republicans, they just think the country is way worse off than it is, and that Democrats and independents think it is. So in the end, you know, because of people's different feelings about the state of the country, and the fact that many people, normal people, understand that the country's doing pretty well, and to the extent that that might make them less motivated to go out and cast a vote to try to turn things around, they stayed at home. And as a result, we couldn't overcome Trump's cult support. These people who were going to come out no matter what. I think that's partly to explain what happened here. And you're probably thinking the obvious question: how in the world could all these Democrats and Biden independents not feel threatened by a Trump presidency? How could they not feel the urgency to vote against this man? I wish I could give you the answer to that, but I think part of the answer, not the whole answer, but I think part of the answer, and I think this is true across the board, is that too many people don't actually consider Donald Trump to be the threat that he is, that we know him to be. I don't think they take it seriously when people call him a fascist and a wannabe dictator. I think this notion that, well, he was president before and we didn't turn into a fascist dictatorship, I think that somehow carries a lot of weight with people. Of course, there are counters to that stupid point, in my opinion. First of all, as we know, he was surrounded by people who, you know, weren't going to go along with all that stuff, and to a large extent were able to prevent him from doing a lot of what he wanted to do. Also, Donald Trump didn't know what the fuck he was doing for most of his term, and wasn't prepared. He didn't expect that he was even going to win. He had nothing in place when he took over. No organization, which is why he pretty much just hired on a bunch of, you know, Republican establishment types who, you know, weren't going to go along with all this crazy. But as we know, that's not going to be the case this time. He's going to be surrounded by lunatics, and so that won't stop him next time. Also, in his first term, he was worried about being reelected. You know, he was running for reelection, and he needed people's votes. When you use the military against them, when you destroy their constitution and do a lot of the other things that he's planning on doing in a second term, that might pose a problem for your reelection. But that's not an issue this time. He's not going to stand for reelection. And by the way, just because Donald Trump is not going to stand for reelection again, that doesn't mean that I believe he'll leave office in 4 years, because I don't necessarily believe that, but we'll talk more about that in future videos. Another reason, though, why I think some people, probably many people, don't take the threat of Donald Trump being a fascist authoritarian seriously is because, number one, most Americans couldn't tell you what fascism is, so it's hard to be scared by something you don't understand. It's just a word to them, you know, overheated political rhetoric to them. But also, I think a lot of people don't find him scary. They just find him to be a clownish buffoon figure who says crazy things but doesn't really mean it. They view him more as an entertainer who just says things for effect and to get attention and to rile people up. But he doesn't really mean it. I think that explains a lot of it. a lot of the failure of people to take him seriously. So, I don't know. I'm just doing my best here to try to understand why 15 million fewer people voted for Kamala Harris than voted for Joe Biden, given everything we know, that you and I know about Donald Trump and the threat that he is. I think these explains a little bit, but as to all these 15 million, I don't know. I really don't. It's unbelievable given what we're facing. Part of our problem is that we are a deeply unserious country. A lot of people who vote and who follow politics obsessively, to them it's entertainment. Politics is a form of entertainment. And especially when you throw in party politics, where people are part of a tribe, voting for your tribe, your party, it's like being a fan of a sports team. You support your team no matter what, and without consequence, right? And I think a lot of people too. That's another point. The consequences part. I think a lot of people don't really believe that there could be any consequences. They've grown up in this country as it is, and they don't really believe that anything could happen to come along and fundamentally change it. So this talk about us losing our rights and us becoming a fascist dictatorship and all that, they don't believe it. They just don't think that could actually happen here. You know, people thought that in other countries. I'm sure people in Germany didn't think it could happen there. It can't happen until it does happen. And then people are shocked. But I thought this couldn't happen here. Now, maybe you should have been a little bit more serious a person. Maybe you should have actually studied history. Because we're not immune from these things happening here. What would make us immune? Our Constitution and our laws? Our Constitution and our laws are just words on paper. And I tell people all the time who criticize the Constitution because it didn't prevent this or didn't prevent that. The Constitution cannot enforce itself. Our laws cannot enforce themselves, as you've seen with Donald Trump. If we have people in positions who are supposed to enforce the law, if they just refuse to do it out of corruption, as in the case of Judge Aileen Cannon, or, because of cowardice, like Merrick Garland, then those laws are meaningless. Same too with the Constitution. The guardrails in the Constitution that are there to protect us from an authoritarian government. And the Constitution does have those things in place. But if we don't follow the Constitution, if the people that we elect to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution, if they don't do it, then the Constitution is meaningless. It requires people who we vote for and put in these positions to do their jobs, to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. It can't defend itself. So I think a lot of people don't take the threat seriously because they don't think it could happen here. And that, I don't have to worry about that. I can just vote for my team. This is all entertainment. And I think no one better personifies the idea of politics as entertainment than Donald Trump, a former reality TV guy. And everything about him is a show. I mean, his rallies, for example, his famous rallies, these aren't campaign speeches in the traditional sense in any way. These aren't serious speeches of a presidential candidate. You know, they're a pathetic attempt at stand-up comedy. I don't know how anyone goes to these things and freaking laughs at any of the things he says. He clearly wants to be a stand-up comic, fancies himself as such, but the man's not funny. I don't get it. But anyways, for him and his cult, politics is entertainment, and I think he's used that to his benefit to be able to diffuse this idea that we see so clearly, that Donald Trump is a threat. But most people just don't get it, or too many people just don't get it. And of course, as we discussed here many times, the lack of understanding about basic issues that people vote on is a big problem. We've talked about the economy. People actually think that the President of the United States controls the price of groceries at your local supermarket. That's just a level of stupidity that is hard to overcome and hard to endure if you're a self-governing people, as we're supposed to be. How do you preserve self-government when the people are morons? Very difficult. Also, I mean, it's not just the economy. I get people commenting all the time on my various platforms, things that they truly believe but just aren't so. Like, for example, heard this one a million times and saw it this morning, as to why Donald Trump won. Well, because of the price of gas. Because, you know, things were great under Donald Trump. Gas was so cheap. And Biden came in and he shut down oil and gas production in this country, and so the prices went up. Every bit of that is wrong. Number one, gas prices were low when Donald Trump left office because the world was basically shut down from the pandemic. Supply and demand, right? People weren't buying gas in nearly the amounts as they were before. And as demand dropped, prices dropped. That's just how it goes. And as to this idea that that Biden shut down domestic oil production, it's absurd. It's just factually wrong. The truth of the matter is that domestic oil production right now has never been higher in the history of the country. We are the world's largest oil producer. That's a fact. The United States is the world's largest producer of oil. And we are producing more oil domestically right now than at any time in our history, including when Donald Trump was president. But how many people went out and cast votes the other day who believe the exact opposite? Again, you can't sustain self-government when the people are morons. To the point that I was making in my previous video about what went wrong, did you ever hear Joe Biden make any of these points, by the way, in any sort of consistent manner over the last 4 years about how we are the world's largest oil producer and that we're producing more than at any time in history? No. I don't know if he ever said it, and if he did say it, he didn't say it very often. This is my point. Donald Trump takes credit for everything, whether he had something to do with it or not. Joe Biden takes credit and has taken credit for nearly nothing over the last 4 years. Donald Trump was constantly selling himself and how he was doing such a good job. Constantly, every time he opened his mouth. Biden, you never hear that. You never hear it. So what are people left to believe? What good is the Biden administration doing if, you know, from their perspective, they never hear about any of it? The only people talking are the Republicans saying that everything is going to hell. That's all they hear. And even though that might not actually be happening in their life, for some reason, people will believe anything, even if the facts of their life don't match what they're being told. You know, that the country is overrun with criminals and illegal aliens raping and murdering people. Well, people can see that's not true in their daily life, but for some reason, when they're told it over and over again by whatever propaganda outlets they're listening to, somehow they come to believe it. Let's talk about the media and how people get their news and information and their opinions. Social media is taking over the world. It's amazing how many people get their news and information from social media. And, it's hard to tell exactly what's going on in the totality of social media because it's such a huge place. But, I'm on Twitter. I'm on YouTube. I'm even on TikTok. By the way, I do have a TikTok channel. I don't post these long form videos on TikTok because that's not really the platform for it, but I do short videos over there on TikTok. So if you're over there, go look me up. Anyway, a lot of people get their news and information from TikTok and those kinds of places. It's amazing. And in those spaces, Republicans are actually, I don't know if the word is dominate. I don't know how accurate that is, but they have a huge presence. And the kind of things that they post there, like if you just scroll through TikTok, at least the things that the algorithm puts in front of me, and I don't even obviously like Trump and Republicans, but yet I see so many things in my feed. I can only imagine what average people have in their feeds. But anyways, the stuff from the Trump side is different than from the left. On for lack of a better word, left-wing Twitter and these other places, you get more information that's actually true. I mean, there's propaganda there, don't get me wrong, but it's much more reality-based. When you see things from these Trump cult accounts, it is idol worship. That's what everything is. They don't talk about facts and the real world. Everything they post is that Donald Trump is just the greatest thing ever. Everybody loves Donald Trump. Everybody. It is just pure idol worship. And if you're just a person who doesn't pay attention to anything outside of what's on your TikTok feed or whatever, and you just see how the whole world loves Donald Trump, at least that's what it would appear, just scrolling through your TikTok feed. Are you really going to take seriously the idea that this man is a threat? You see him doing his stupid little two-fisted jerk-off move, his little dance, his little YMCA dance, and they make a million memes about that, about how great Donald Trump is. They set it to, catchy music, and they make all these little videos about their worship for Donald Trump. And everybody loves him. Hard to think that man is actually a threat to democracy, judging by your TikTok feed. And this is where a lot of people get their news and information. And also, a lot of young people, Donald Trump has been with us for 10 years. A lot of young people, people, say they're 25 now, they were 14, 15 years old when Donald Trump first came on the scene. Since they've been paying attention, since they've been old enough to pay attention to anything, Donald Trump has been a national figure. And we haven't descended into dictatorship. So they just don't see it. They don't see the threat that he is. Now on to this issue about how we fight. Because yesterday I said that we need to keep fighting. That this obviously was a huge setback. And we are headed to a very dark place. But we have no choice but to keep fighting. And a lot of people ask, well, what are you talking about? How can we fight? What the heck can we do? We just lost the White House to a fascist wannabe dictator, and who might soon be a fascist actual dictator. We lost the Senate. We don't know yet if we've lost the House. Or maybe we do. I honestly haven't been watching the news, really. I can't take it right now. So I don't even know what the state of the House is. But people say, so how the heck are we supposed to fight back? What could we possibly do? Well, I do have thoughts about that, and I'll be getting more specifically into that in future videos. But the overall, what it looks like, generally speaking, how we fight is that we need to survive as best we can these next 4 years. Try to fight every attempt at taking away our rights, of stripping away constitutional protections. I mean, we're just going to have to engage politically as we always do. You know, we don't know what the House is going to be. The Senate's going to be, you know, it's closely divided, even though Republicans have control. There's still the filibuster, at least for now. You know, a lot of those Republican senators, even if they're MAGA, they know that depending upon their state, their voters might not reward them with re-election if they go hardcore MAGA. So we're going to have to fight these things politically, as we always have, on individual issues as they come up. But the goal is to prevent as much of what Donald Trump wants to do as possible. Now, a lot of it, he's just going to be able to do as president. The things he's going to do through the executive branch, there's not a whole hell of a lot we can do about that. But to the extent we can do anything, we need to do it with the goal of getting through these next 4 years. And we'll see what the world looks like. And yes, I know, I'm aware of what I've said, that I think there's really real concerns about whether or not he's even going to leave at the end of 4 years. Look, we'll just have to take these things one step at a time. I don't have all the answers for you yet. This is going to be a work in progress. The truth of the matter is, no one's ever been through this in American history. Other societies have been through this, but it's never happened in America before, so there's no blueprint of how opposing an elected fascist in America. There's no blueprint for what that looks like. Wish there were. Wish there was a playbook we could take off the shelf and know exactly what to do, but there isn't. So we're going to have to figure this out as we go along. But we have to keep up the fight, you know, and wait for that moment when we can take back power, if that moment comes. And I don't know about you, but I am done with these freaking polls. Don't ever tell me about another poll. I don't ever want to hear from another one of these freaking pollsters ever again. These people have no idea what they're talking about. They are never right. If you or I were as bad at our jobs as these pollsters are at theirs, we'd have been fired a long time ago. Screw these people. They have no clue what they're talking about. I think we need to accept the fact that society has changed so much, given technology and other things, where the way people can be reached, to where they get their news, all of this stuff, that they just cannot be polled accurately anymore. These polls need to just close up shop and go out of business, because they're worthless. They're never right. Now, I based much, not all, but much of what I thought was going to happen in the election. Actually, it's not true, but the polls factored into how I viewed what was going to happen in this election. And I was right and I was wrong at the same time. I was right in that I did not believe that the polls were accurate. The polls pretty much told us that the race was a dead heat. It was exactly tied. Every freaking poll, every national poll, well, not everyone, but a lot of them. And when you average them all out, you know, these polling averages, tied election, 48-48. And then in all the battleground states, tied election, 48-48. I didn't believe that for a second. I didn't believe that was true. And I reasoned that, you know, these polls are never right. And so if they're all telling us that this is a tied election, then it's probably not a tied election. Probably someone is winning this election. Because I don't believe in these polls. They're just never accurate. So someone's leading. And I look at the arguments for thinking that Trump was leading, and I looked at the arguments as I saw them for why to think that Kamala Harris was winning, and I just thought there was more reasons to believe that Kamala Harris was winning. Things that aren't polls. Well, some things that are polls, like polls of different groups that we got, that we're told that there was a much bigger gender gap among women than there was for men. That turned out not to be true. The gender gaps were roughly the same. And other things like that. But then I looked at other things like money. Kamala Harris raised 3 times as much money as Donald Trump. Kamala Harris had 3 times as many donors as Donald Trump. And I figured, that's got to count for something. I mean, that's, if nothing else, that's a measure of enthusiasm. And then it's an advantage just in cold, hard cash. And then, she had more money for ground game. From all reports, she had a much more intense, more structured ground game than Trump. These things have to count for something. So, you put all these things together, and I thought, because I don't believe the polls are tied, someone's winning, that it's more likely that Kamala Harris is winning. Plus, the crowd size, all these other things that you can see, like crowd size, enthusiasm of the crowds, and all this stuff. Well, apparently that's all, obviously was wrong. I was right in that the polls were wrong when they said it was tied. It clearly wasn't a tie, but I was wrong in thinking that, Kamala Harris was probably ahead. Clearly not. But another thing, what the hell is that going to say? But another thing about the money in politics, I gave that a lot of weight because usually in the past that counts for a lot. And Kamala Harris had far more money than Donald Trump, and I thought that was a clear advantage. I think we're at a place in this country now that the money is less of an advantage. I know it doesn't seem that way, but I'm starting to think that that's the case. And I think that has much to do with what I've already been talking about, which is social media. There's paid social media. You can run these ads and things, and that costs a lot of money, and you can target your ads much more specifically. Instead of buying a TV spot that's going to play in a state or a region of a state or something, you can target it much more specifically. You can target people by interests, by very specific location, and all kinds of other ways you can target these people. And so the money's much more effective. You don't need as much of it to target the people you need to target. But then there is so much in the free advertising on social media. And from what I saw, and this is not in any way scientific, but just in what I saw, this is a big advantage for Trump with this. Is just this online, because it's not coming from paid social media. This is coming from the cult. Remember, it's a cult, and there's tens of millions of these people. And what do? They base their entire lives around Donald Trump and worshiping this man. And so, how did they express that? A lot of them took to social media and posted constantly about their adulation for Donald Trump, that he's the greatest thing ever. The economy was the greatest in the world under Donald Trump. We had no crime. It was friggin' utopia under Donald Trump. They posted all of these memes just, showing how wonderful this man is. That's all free. The campaign didn't pay for any of that. And they did it because they're a sick cult who exists to worship Donald Trump. Democrats don't have that. Democrats aren't a cult of personality. Yes, there's people, posting positive messages about Kamala Harris, certainly, but they're not a cult. And if you have cult-like fanaticism on one side and then just normal people posting normal political things on the other, which side do you think is going to be far more intense? Yeah, the cult side. And I think that was a huge benefit for Donald Trump, which now in retrospect I think helped him immensely. I didn't think about it at the time, And, you know, I haven't seen any studies on this or anything, but this is just my own personal opinion based on what I'm seeing myself. There might not be anything to that, or maybe I'm overblowing it, I don't know. But to me, I think there's something to that. And I think that, look, Donald Trump won easily with far less money. So you have to conclude that money doesn't necessarily translate to victory. And then you begin to wonder, well, then to what extent, you know, is money an advantage? And maybe it's just if you have a certain level of money, then, you know, that's fine. That's all you need. You don't get as much marginal return on additional dollars. Anyways, that's just something to think about. But I think we're in a completely new era. The polls are worthless. And maybe money isn't as important if you have a cult-like following and you have access to, as the cult does, to free means of pushing propaganda through social media, which more and more and more, and it's only going to continue. 4 years from now, even more people are going to get all their news and information from social media. So that's going to be a big part of it going forward. So we're just in a new landscape now.
So now I'm back in my office, and I'm going to have a lot more to say about this, I'm sure, as we get more information about this election and I give it further thought and have other ideas that I want to share with you. So please, if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please do so and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of my future videos. Also, you can follow me on Twitter, and I have a brand new Facebook page, and I'd really strongly encourage you to follow me over there on Facebook. Just look for The Romano Report. I'll also go ahead and put a link in the description below. I'd love to see you over there on Facebook. And most people don't know this, I actually have a TikTok channel as well, where I put other videos. So it's not just a carbon copy of this channel. I do long form videos primarily on this channel, and TikTok doesn't really like in-depth long form videos. So I do short video clips over there. So if you're on TikTok, please look for The Romano Report and follow me over there. So that's it for now. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you again soon. Take care.